Welcome to the Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Circle, the leading employee benefits and engagement platform.
Hi, everyone. This is Rohit from Vantage HR Influencers Podcast, and today I'm excited to have Kelly Loudermilk, who has more than 10 years of experience in HR and is the founder of BuildHR and also a HR manager at Ascent Geomatics. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So, I wanted to understand, how did you get started in HR and what got you excited about the field of HR?
So it's kind of funny because most people who fell into HR will always say that it wasn't on purpose. It was an accident.
Right.
I got into HR when I worked for a major international manufacturing firm, Hilti, and my manager at the time was the national recruiting manager for all of the United States that covered about 13,000 positions. And she went out on maternity leave and they said, well, we're going to put you in her role until she comes back. So I just kind of came from this paper pusher kind of internship to really spearheading all of the national recruiting and dealing with internships both nationally and internationally for them. Luckily, I got a lot of the training there. But that's essentially how I got started. I started in recruiting, and when I spoke locally at a Rotary Club, it kind of launched my career more on the HR side because of small businesses coming to approach me for projects of their own. And what really excites me is the way to innovate how you work with people. They say that coffee is one of the largest traded commodities on the planet. And I like to joke that in a way people are too, because they, are doing jobs and they're trading jobs and they're trading trades. And it's a very unpredictable area to be in when it comes to business. And so I really love how to innovate that to make it where it's not such a chore to go to work, because it's where we spend most of our time.
Absolutely. Very interesting to know about your journey and how you started about it. I wanted to understand, how can a company retain talent when the budgets are tight, especially in these times of COVID, where almost every leader is struggling to contain their talent and they want to retain and grow a talent inside the company.
Yeah, so that is a very trending topic right now. Everybody's budgets have been cut, sales are down, et cetera. And we want to keep the people that we have, especially those rock star employees. And I really feel that people just want a human on their side, right? They don't want to feel like they're part of a system. They want to know that who they are working for understands the trauma that they may be going through, whether that be mental, emotionally, or even physically by getting sick. So I think it's really about bringing it back to the basics of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a very popular theory across the board when it comes to psychology, but also in the HR practice. And it's, making sure that their needs are met from a physical level, but then there's this level of psychological safety that really matters, and that connectiveness. So I would say to retain talent on a tight budget, don't try to wow them with all the bells and whistles. Bring it back to just that human connection. Listen to them, really understand what they're going through, give them a break. Just treat them as a human being going through, an international worldwide pandemic. And I think that that's really going to show that you care and also lead to that retainment.
Right. And, especially when it comes to retaining talent and growing talent, it's very important to define and prioritize culture. And that's something you can't build it in a fortnight, right? But how would you define and prioritize culture, especially in these times of crisis?
I would definitely talk to your people. And I love doing workshops, even if they're not necessarily structured. Just having that discussion, whether that be over Zoom or WebEx or Teams, whatever virtual type of meeting platform you can create, and just have an open conversation of, what are the things that we really value in our people, in our peers, and the standards that we want to hold each other to. And that's a really good starting point to define what it is to be in your culture. And hopefully most companies are redefining what their cultures are to keep up to date with these changing times. Everyone's talking about the new normal, and being remote may be a part of that. And so having these conversations to redefine what was previously there as a culture, I think not only prioritizes it and showcases that it's front of mind for you as a leader, but also shows people that you're thinking about it and you're being active in defining that with them and making it a part of the conversation, which also leads to retainment because they feel like they're a part of that bigger picture. So you kind of do a double whammy, if you will, there by having that conversation because you're retaining them as well as redefining your culture in times of this quote unquote new normal.
Absolutely. Also, Kelly, you talked about retaining high talent and rock stars. How can organizations build high performers in a systematic way so that they are given the biggest opportunities and not the biggest problems to solve in the company?
Yeah, I would say it's really just kind of bringing it to a standardization. And, the nice thing that you can do, especially when budgets are tight, is to build this culture and your values and, target your high performers and showcase that, their behaviors. And by doing that, not only are you reinforcing that positive behavior to not only build up your high performers more so, but you're showcasing the expectations that you require from all performers. And that, kind of trickles down to, those people who want to, emulate those high performers, and they are brought up to a new standard. So you're creating more of a structure around your values and your culture and your key behaviors that you're wanting to see, and you're praising that positive behavior in order to showcase, this is my expectation, this is what you get in that regard. And then you're going to see those high performers continue to perform high, and those who are not super high performers step up their game because of that, just kind of system that you've created and that standardization of your values, your culture, and your expectations of how you perform. And also just providing your managers with the tools to have a conversation with low performers, figure out what the root cause is, and help them build them up to become better performers. And I think that's another kind of nuance to those conversations.
Very interesting. And should companies segment talent for putting them into critical jobs, or should they give equal opportunity to everybody across when it comes to giving opportunities for critical jobs?
So I guess it depends on the critical job and how a company might segment that. For example, if it's an IT job that's critical and you want equal opportunity for everyone, well, somebody who's not IT oriented can't necessarily perform that job.
Absolutely.
But for high performers, they have proven themselves to step up. And that's kind of why they get into more critical jobs. They've proven that they can take on that additional responsibility and that they're accountable. So in a way, when it comes to segmenting critical jobs, I would say based on performance. And, you should always have equal opportunity. But at the same time, those top performers are already showing that they are more than capable. I would definitely say you need to maybe mend the two together, like create a combination. You're opening up the opportunity for critical jobs for everyone. But at the same time, if somebody comes to say, I want to be in this role, and they're not a top performer, have a conversation with them to say, you're not qualified to be in this role, but let's talk about how we can get you there for the next critical role that opens up. And then when somebody does come that's qualified, you can say, absolutely, here you go. So it's kind of a mix between allowing for everyone to feel important and to become a high performer, because you're creating conversations for those who are not high performers to become high performers, but
Right.
also allowing those high performers to step into those more critical roles. So it's a 50-50 blend, if you will.
Correct. And do you think, especially in a remote culture, should all roles be outcome based? And what would happen in future? Would more people be willing to be working in a remote setup, or do you think going forward, it's just a trend which is going to go away in a couple of years?
I do think every role should be more outcome based. Input doesn't always match output. You can have minimum input and have a very maximized output. Somebody who does a job in 4 hours and gets the job done versus somebody who has to crank away at 20 hours to get the same outcome. I would definitely want to go with somebody who does it in 4 hours, because they
Right.
obviously have that efficiency level. So I think every role should be outcomes based, because we're in a time where you can't do the normal input. You can't perform the normal 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day, whatever that might look like. Even for myself, working remote, I tend to be at home quite often, and I have children, and I have, my husband, and I have to navigate my responsibilities to my family as well as to my work. And I would like to think that my outcomes are still very strong, but how I get there has changed. And I think that that's kind of telling of what's going to happen. Companies are realizing that you can get the same outcome, and they can cut costs with offices and allow for a more diverse talent pool, because now you can hire anyone around, regardless of location, around the world, around the nation, whatever that might look like, because now you can get the top talent because you don't require them to be on site. So I do think this is going to open up a more remote environment across the board. I don't think that this is going to go away, because I don't think people are going to see the benefits necessarily of going back into the office full time. They're going to see that these remote opportunities are more beneficial for a work-life balance, as well as better outcomes, more successful goals getting met, and just happier employees as well, because they can have that capacity to be at home.
Right. That's a very interesting insight. And how can companies, and especially HR leaders, balance budgets and activities in a remote work setup?
Yeah, you have to be very conscious or conscientious, I guess you can say, when selecting different types of things within a remote workforce. What works for a few may not work for all. So I would say mix up the types of activities that you do, from maybe a one-time big budget type of deal versus maybe a lot of smaller get-togethers that are very low in costs. Invest in maybe doing like some team building activities remote. A lot of companies have popped up, if you will, overnight with the remote workforce team building type of buy-in in order to facilitate this, because people are remote and they need to feel connected. So they're ranging in all sorts of types of budgets, but a simple just get together virtually that costs nothing, and just having a chat face to face and checking in with people. I've even had clients actually do where you call a farm on the office call, and they basically put a goat on the video chat, and something as simple as that has been able to make such an impact. And it's a discussion that people love to have now, like how they got to chat with a goat on an office call. And it's so so small of a task that cost nothing that made such a big impact. And there are other things that people can do, big virtual scavenger hunts and trivia games and all these things that these companies have come up with that are phenomenal. but you don't need to spend a lot of money to make that impact. And that's what the big takeaway is, I think, in the remote workforce. It's really just caring about the person and what they bring to the table overall, and making sure that you provide enough activities to keep them engaged as well as connected to other human beings so that they feel a part of the bigger picture. So I think it's a really great way to experiment and not to be afraid to experiment and try different activities and see what sticks and see what doesn't, and just have fun with it, because we're all figuring this out together across the globe. And we're going to adjust and come out of the other side stronger for it. But we just have to have this kind of, muddy middle part of figuring everything out together in order to make it across to the other side. So that's where we're at right now, I think, as a globe.
Absolutely, it's a phenomenon which is happening worldwide, and what I've also realized is for some departments in the company, the productivity levels have gone high, and not so for other people. But how can companies track productivity and monitor performance so that the employees and employees are at the same page?
Yeah, I would say just really breaking it down to simple communication, really breaking the barrier and creating a level of transparency as much as you can, because not every company, allows for certain transparency and communication, and that's okay because that just varies based on cultures, right? Like one company might be very close-chested on their financials versus a publicly traded company has to provide that transparency. So however, whatever level of transparency and communication you can have, I think can really help bring productivity levels up to create that same page for everyone, because they feel everyone's lost right
Yeah.
now and everyone is worried. And they are worried about a lot of different things. Their minds, are going a million miles an hour. And I actually, went to a training about neuroscience and kind of change management. And they said, in the absence of information, our minds go to the worst case scenario.
Right.
And so, my takeaway for that, for anyone that's a leader in this type of situation, even productivity, anything really, create as much communication and as transparent of communication, no matter how minuscule you may think it is, to everyone in your team or your organization, because you're providing that information to fill those gaps and avoiding them to think worst case scenario. And that is what's going to lead productivity across the board up, as well as psychological safety, retainment, engagement, caring. I mean, it all kind of stems from there. So you just want to really create clear, concise, consistent communication and as much transparency as you are allowed when you're communicating.
Right, absolutely. Transparency in communication is really important during these times. And Kelly, you also founder of BuildHR, which you mentioned earlier, and you for the new product which is HR on demand. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, so HR on demand is access for small business leaders or even managers to a national HR team, and it's only $149 a month. So it's a membership that's a reoccurring monthly membership, and you get a self-service library of all these different types of policies, documentations, trainings. It's compliant across the nation. California is a very popular state with compliance issues, especially around sexual harassment. We are compliant as well there. But essentially, it is an all access HR department, virtually speaking, for any manager or small business leader at the cost of less than a part-time hire. So it's a huge investment in your business in terms of your rate of return, and your actual physical, monetary investment is very low. So it's a very positive impact to have, especially during these times. But more so in knowing that you have that resource in your back pocket. HR on demand, my most popular offering, as well as it really allows people to feel more secure and their own resources when it comes to people.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
So right now it is Cracking the Curiosity Code, and it is by Diana Hamilton, and it's one of my favorite books that I have read more than once, but it's because curiosity has led to so many different things in my career, and it's even led me to hopefully write my own book, hopefully later on this year. And it's just something I even spoke about earlier this summer in the virtual school assembly on LinkedIn. And it's one of those things where it's not studied greatly. It's a behavioral attribute that we have. And it's one of those things that I want to learn more about, and I love it. And the way I can apply curiosity to business, to HR, to people management, and to just general life, I think adds another level of that self-actualization, if you want to go back to Maslow hierarchy of needs. So it's just one of those books that I really, really enjoy, and it's called Cracking the Curiosity Code.
We'll put that in the show notes. And do you follow any HR leader or CEO, which young listeners can also follow?
Absolutely. So there is one in the UK, and she is Disrupt HR. She is phenomenal at just speaking on different types of leadership trends, people trends, but it's Disrupt HR in the UK. Brene Brown in the United States is a phenomenal, professional across the board, but she provides research that is very impactful to the HR space. And there's a million of other types that I love to follow on LinkedIn, but those are my two favorites just because Brene Brown and Disrupt HR have very focused notes, advice, and opinions around people. And I think that that's what makes them so important to HR leaders and CEOs that deal with people. But they are wonderful to follow and to read more about.
Got it. And what is the one piece of advice would you give to young HR leaders who want to build their careers in HR?
I would say be curious. I know that that's kind of corny, but don't be afraid to take on new challenges, take on new projects. If you don't know the answer to something, it's as simple as Googling it and reading as much as you can on it. Nobody is going to have the answer for everything in HR. I've had to do the role of HR department of one, where I'm literally the entire HR department, every single role that you can ever imagine in HR, I have done. And it's only because I was curious enough to take on those challenges, and it has catapulted my career to where I can be, a business owner, and I can be, a support mechanism to other corporations because I learned so much by simply saying yes to certain projects. And when I'm not comfortable in it, I'm not afraid to say, no, I'm not comfortable in it, but let me do some research on that and see if I'm the right fit for you in that project. And more often than not, it's not, that difficult to figure something out, and just being open-minded. So just be curious, ask questions, jump into projects that you feel that you can take on, and it will stretch your capabilities beyond what you could have imagined. And learning more about HR as a whole versus a very singular part leads to higher engagement and higher job satisfaction because you're getting a variety within your work, and it just makes you more experienced overall to help others. And I think that that's what's so important in this time right now, is being able to help others. And that's one way to get started, is just start jumping in and getting your hands dirty with some of those projects.
Yeah, very well said. And Kelly, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about BuildHR and other projects that you're doing?
So I am available online at yourhrsource.com. That's my direct website for BuildHR. LinkedIn is the easiest way to get in contact with me. I am about to roll out a couple of different communities in terms of contact and actually contacting me via text and telephone. So it's going to be a very exciting month for myself and BuildHR. Either LinkedIn or yourhrsource.com are going to be the easiest ways to get into contact or to follow and stay up to date with things that are going on.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking your time and speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
Absolutely. I had a great time as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage HR Influencers Podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for new episodes.